Hello, I'm Brigantia Blackbird of the Blackbird Grimoire. Welcome to the daily forecast for Wednesday, May 22nd, 2024. Good morning and happy Mercury's Day to you. For a very brief rundown, we are in a waxing gibbous stage of the moon. We are in the Gemini season, the Celtic tree month of Hawthorn, Deer season, and the Pluto retrograde. Our astrology for today goes as follows. The sun is in Gemini, mutable air, representing communication. The moon is in second quarter Scorpio, fixed water, representing self-confidence. Mercury is in Taurus, fixed earth, representing artistry. Venus is in Taurus, fixed earth, representing artistry. Mars is in Aries, cardinal fire, representing initiative. Jupiter is in Taurus, fixed earth, representing practicality. Saturn is in Pisces, mutable water, representing imagination. Uranus is in Taurus, fixed earth, representing practicality. Neptune is in Pisces, mutable water, representing imagination. Pluto is retrograding Aquarius, fixed air, meaning that we need to examine intentions and keep in mind our Pluto retrograde mantra: reflect, heal, evolve. Our waxing gibbous, again, it reminds us to cultivate our intentions. And for the Scorpio moon, some do's are do focus, do research, do examine motivations, don't get involved in big family gatherings, don't get caught up in psychoanalyzing things, and don't be the victim of manipulation. So today we have Taurus Mercury and the Scorpio moon coming together in a burst of creativity, but that creativity is likely to turn inward thanks to that, because Scorpio does tend to be a bit on that introverted side, and that means that today's excellent for brainstorming. So make your plans, put things in motion. Don't feel pressure to be too public about exactly what you're getting up to. Sometimes it's fine to kind of have that secret creative project, and then when you're at a more advanced stage, then start showing it to the rest of the world. So have fun today, gang. Our tarot card for the day is the King of Cups. It represents a caring leader concerned with the aesthetics and happiness. Now, the suit of cups, of course, as we know, is closely tied to the water element, and that takes us right to emotions and just how we are processing these things all of the time. So if we're looking at the King of Cups of someone who might be a leader in some sense, perhaps a boss, or someone who we admire for whatever reason in whatever capacity, or something that we might be being called upon to cultivate becoming. Someone who is concerned not only with the end result, but the process by which we got there. You can be this terrible hard ass. You can not give people any kind of slack. You can be an absolute misery to look to. Sometimes you do achieve the ultimate objective. However, if you destroy your team that helped get you there in the process, that success is going to be very short-lived. You are going to make yourself subject to mutiny towards replacement, and just not enjoying any kind of meaningful respect. I mean, people might fear you, but they're not going to respect you, and that lack of respect is going to create ongoing problems. So if you are in a position of leadership, think about the manner in which you conduct your affairs, how you deal with people, because there's a way of doing things that's going to not only get the job done, but it's actually going to have people on board with it going forward. And then there's ways to, fail. And now with the aesthetics are really they're not just subjective to a large degree, but they're also really quite emotional. Sometimes the things we find beautiful has everything to do with the kind of memories that they stir. For example, I was raised in Missouri in a fairly rural area. I grew up in a small town, but there was tons of farms around. And so when I was out and about, I would see, kind of the classic white farmhouse, with the barns, and, people had their fields and their tractors and the animals and all that. And so that gives me that created a kind of sense of beauty, because there is something very beautiful about it, but someone who was raised in a different environment may not necessarily find that to be so. Another thing that I was always exposed to growing up was a lot of British television. Which is why sometimes the way I pronounce things is a little funny, because, I've had both American and British accents in my ears all of my life. And so that has had an interesting effect, to say the least. But I grew up, watching shows where that took place, yeah, in this gorgeous English countryside, with really ancient buildings, sometimes these huge country houses that they're just steeped in history. And then you had the little cottages and everything in between. And that also contributed to what I really consider to be beautiful. But again, someone who didn't grow up watching that, or who didn't grow up in that environment, they're not going to necessarily look at those things and say, oh gosh, this is just the ideal. So it is very personal. It also depends upon what is beautiful in the landscape that you are living in, and are you looking for beauties? Now, I live in Missouri, so a lot of the aesthetics of, the rural farm, and as well as the English countryside, there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of similarities. So I am placed in an area of the world where the sense of aesthetics that was ingrained into me, it finds outward expression all of the time. But what if husband unit said, well, honey, I got a job in Arizona, so we're going to go live in the desert? Now, assuming that did not lead to an absolute breakdown of my marriage and divorce, assuming that I just went along with all of that, I would have to adjust my sense of aesthetics, from decorating the house in a particular way because it would be grossly inappropriate in a desert environment, from the way that I garden, because the same things are just absolutely not going to grow, and finding beauties in that different landscape. And this isn't just physical beauty. When we're looking for beauty in the world, a lot of times, if it's not really living up to our expectations, sometimes we need to change our perspective in order to appreciate what does naturally exist there. So there's some food for thought. And then happiness. There's a absolute shortfall of happiness these days. Shortfall of not just happiness, but contentment, and just the sense that you're living a good, meaningful life. Not everyone is going to live this big, large, huge, legendary, everyone's eyes are on me and I'm fantastically wealthy kind of life. And quite frankly, not everyone would wish to. There's a limit to that kind of public sort of lifestyle, about what it can actually provide for people besides physical comfort, which has its place. But, again, that only takes you so far. And happiness, I keep coming back to this idea that you're going to find the greatest degree of happiness in contentment. Where are you happy when things are quiet? Where are you happy when things are simply kind of rolling along, where things are unfolding naturally as they should, and when you're not necessarily having to force the issue, when it isn't about, I can change this all around? Where are you actually finding contentment? Because where you find contentment, I'm pretty sure you're also going to start finding the pathway to happiness as well. Now, today's Celtic triad, it reads, three gains which will turn to loss in the end: gaining fame for a harmful act, gaining wealth from injustice, and gaining the upper hand in an evil strife. Yeah, it's another whammy today. So, fame for doing harm. It does absolutely no credit to anyone to be known for a dishonorable cause. And if people only know you because you were breaking something, or you were destroying something, or you were being hateful, or you were doing all of these ghastly, dreadful things that actually caused demonstrable harm in the world, well, what was the point of all of that fame? What's the point of infamy? Yeah, you have a reputation, but it's not a reputation for anything good. So that is a kind of loss. And then unjust wealth. There are perfectly ethical ways of doing business, and there's nothing wrong with being wildly successful. I am not a hater of billionaires. I'm not a hater of poor people. The only thing that matters to me as far as finances is, were you doing an honest job, and was it a fair exchange of your labor or service for a particular wage? That's all that really matters to me. Are people conducting themselves honestly, honorably? But if someone is gaining wealth from theft, and they're doing it through underhanded skullduggery, there's nothing worthwhile in that. That is loss, because okay, you got all these toys, but everyone in the world has not just that they disapprove of you, but they have reason to look down on you. You are seen as someone who has made the world a worse place. That is a loss. There's no gain in that. And then winning in evil. If the goal is wrong in and of itself, there can be no victory of, oh, I am in this cesspit of horrible evildoers, and I won out over all the other evildoers. Hooray! What did you win exactly? Not much, because what you're doing is still wrong. The goal was wrong. You are still doing harm and bringing greater evil into the world. So, yeah, you lose. You are not, and this is why I think it's very important for us to remember, especially in these days where we do not seem to see much accountability for people who are behaving truly atrociously. Getting away with it is very much an illusion. It damages the soul. It damages human relationships. It damages your relationship with the gods and with your ancestors. There is no actual winning from doing dreadful things or from being a dreadful person. It is all an illusion, and one way or another, that bill for that does come due, and we all pay one way or the other. Now, today's magical intention is faith. The color for that is topaz. The plant is the yellow iris. The animal is the grasshopper. And the crystal is the yellow diamond. And the thing about faith is that faith can actually be grown. And the way I think we really grow our faith in a pagan term is when we see the connection between our spiritual ideals and our various ideas and between manifested reality, because that's always our measuring stick. If we see something in nature and it's in agreement with our spiritual ideas, then we know we're onto something. That's our litmus test. Not a book, not any particular leader, not even tradition itself. It's when we are looking, I see how this works. I see the physical manifestation, I see the spiritual manifestation, I see the relationship between the two, and then you grow, because then you start seeing certain principles enact over and over and over again. That's how faith is built, that's how a solid practice is built, and that's what gives you strength, even as you are sorting out ideas and testing theories and trying to strive for a stronger connection when the answers aren't so straightforward. If you have a solid foundation that you can always return to, then you're going to be able to endure, all of the areas in which, you know, you don't have answers. It's a great question. You don't have answers, and you don't currently see a pathway to the answers. You have to have something to sustain you through those times. Now, for today's pagan practice, you might consider hailing a deity associated with wisdom. And again, I'd like to encourage you to look inward today and ask yourself, what do you truly want to create? Not what do you have to create, not do what other people think you should create. What do you want to create? What do you want to bring into the world? Another thing you can do is lay out a divination spread to help aid you in your brainstorming. This can be a bit of a challenge if you are new to different forms of divination, because you're having to take, okay, this card came up, it represents this concept. How does that relate to me? It's a little bit more of a brain teaser. It's not as straightforward as other kinds of reasoning, but it is very good practice. So definitely don't give up, even if that's something that's still pretty difficult for you. Another thing we might do today is practice tact. There's a lot of problems that I see in our world that I think just basic good manners would go a long way to solving, and having a more tactful, civil form of address. I think that's one of those little points of etiquette that maybe we can start bringing back into the world and have some good impact, because just the way people talk to each other now is really off-putting. Of like, yeah, I don't really want to consider what you're saying just because you're that much of an asshole. And that's something that gets in the way of problem solving. It gets in the way of people being able to form good relationships with one another, even just the good relationships that should exist between neighbors. So learning to become more tactful, get your point across without, bludgeoning someone to death with it. There are benefits to this. And then you might also carry quartz. The reason why I recommended quartz today is because quartz is a natural amplifier. So whether you are doing a lot of brainstorming today, or you're trying to do something more external to yourself today, asking that quartz to amplify what you are doing, that's a little extra energy you can put towards your projects today. And quartz also has a kind of a purifying, clarifying quality to it. So it could make you a little bit sharper and more on your game. Give it a try. Then for your journal prompt today, brainstorm and a Malk themed hand fasting. That could be very fun. So I just have, as always, these are journal prompts of all this month. They have very much largely been just for the sheer fun of it. Bring some fun to our traditions. Start thinking about how we might enact things in a more paganized world, and just see what you can come up with. I'd be curious to hear about that, actually. So that's what I have for you guys today. Come back for the next edition of the Daily Forecast. In the meantime, share your thoughts with me in the comments section below or email me at brigantiablackbird@protonmail.com and I'll get back with you there. But that does it for today, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.